evening, everyone. It's Nick here again with the 80s hard rock CD collection. Just to recap the last few videos I've done, the first one was Faster Pussycat, the second one was Bon Jovi, and just recently we looked at Poison. Now today we're going to look at a band that actually came from England. They're not American, they came from England. They came from a city called Sheffield in England. Now this band first started in 1976, so very early. Now the band I'm talking about, and this band is still going today, they're still going, they're still touring and they're still making albums. The band I'm talking about is Def Leppard. There you go. So yeah, they started very early. They released two albums in the very, very early 80s. I don't actually have these two albums. I still mean to get them. Their first album was called On Through the Night, and their second album was called High and Dry. And these albums were just straight out hard rock music, you know. But they developed a following, and they just used to play around their hometown and various other cities in England. But it wasn't until 1983 that they released Pyromania, their third album. Now this album actually got them noticed overseas in America, and they sold at least about 3 to 4 million copies of this alone in America. Now I'll just show you a picture of the group. There we go there. Now on the far left you've got Rick Allen, who's the drummer. Next to him is Joe Elliott, the lead singer. Next to him is Rick Savage, the bass player. And next to him is Phil Collen, guitar player. And next to him is Steve Clark, guitar player as well. Yeah, so they released this in 1983, as I said, and it became an immediate success. And they went over to America, obviously, and toured over there. But unfortunately, England, their home country, sort of disowned them in a way because they thought they accused Def Leppard of selling out, by playing overseas, which was a bit harsh, I think. But all Def Leppard was doing was obviously expanding their audience and their fan base. So if you can get a lot of fans overseas, well, why not go for it, I think. But anyway, so they had great success over there. Now, unfortunately, tragedy struck the band, and this happened in 1985. It was a real tragedy what happened, and Rick Allen there, that's a picture of him. He was involved in a really horrific car accident, a really bad car accident, and he unfortunately lost his arm. So we're talking about a drummer. Obviously, drummers have two arms, as we know. We're talking about a drummer who, his career, his job was playing the drums, and he lost his arm. Now, Def Leppard being the band they are very close. They're like family. They didn't throw him out of the band. They didn't get rid of him and look for a drummer with two arms. They gave him time, and whilst Rick Allen was in hospital, obviously recovering from what happened, he actually was using his feet in regards to playing the drums. So he was keeping beat with his feet. He was just practicing on the end of the bed with two bits of foam on the end of the bed, just trying to get strength in his feet. Now, and that went on for about a good year and a half, his rehabilitation. Now, what happened, it would have been around 1986 that he actually had a specialised, customised drum that was made up for him. And what he did, he used one foot to use as the beat, the drum beat, which he would do by pressing on a special pedal. And the other foot he would use as a normal bass kick drum. And with his one arm, he would use that for the cymbals, for the crash cymbals and the other drums on the drum kit. So it is an absolute, hugely remarkable thing what he's accomplished. I mean, you don't hear of one-arm drummers, you just don't hear about it. And the fact that he's made a career out of this, and I think it's actually good inspiration for all of us. You know, the fact that whatever tragedy in life, whatever hardship you come across, we can always get through it, you know, with sheer determination and faith and everything. So I have the utmost respect for Rick Allen, what he's done, and to overcome such a horrific injury like that and to lose a limb. I mean, yeah, what more can I say? But in moving on, in 1987 they released this album, Hysteria. Now this was the album that made them absolute megastars, superstars. This album sold at least about 15 million copies in the United States, just in the United States alone. Now, I don't know the exact figures around the world, but it is hugely phenomenal, the amount of copies. So that is their most popular album to date. And it produced hit singles such as Women, Rocket, Animal, Pour Some Sugar on Me, Armageddon, Hysteria. So, I mean, over half of this album is full of hit singles. Now, they did have another hit single called Love Bites, and that actually went #1 on the American Billboard charts. So obviously there was just no stopping them. There was absolutely no stopping them. But unfortunately, tragedy did strike again for this band. Their guitar player, Steve Clark, I'll just show you a quick picture of Steve. Steve Clark is a one on the far right. He was one of the guitar players on the far right there. Now, Steve Clark died a tragic death. I won't go into the details about how he died, but it was tragic. It was personal issues and it was tragic. He was only 30 years old. He died in 1991. So that was after this huge album was made. And of course, they went on tour. But Steve died in 91. And what they did, they came back in 1992 with the album Adrenalize. Now, they actually stayed as a 4-piece band. So it was Rick Allen, Phil Collen on guitar, Joe Elliott on lead vocals, and Rick Savage on bass. They remained a 4-piece, and Phil Collen did all of the guitar work on this album, Hysteria. Adrenalize. And this album again produced hit singles like Let's Get Rocked, Stand Up, Kick Love Into Motion, and that went multi-platinum as well. And it was quite sad for the band because they just lost obviously one of their band members. It was obviously a close friend and a close musician to them. He was in the band from day one, so it was very tragic what happened to Steve. But as I said, I won't go into the details about what happened to him. Now, it would have been 1995, they released this album, Slang. Now, this was a bit different. It didn't have the huge classic Def Leppard sound as we all know. It was sort of stripped back. There was still electric guitars, but it was more stripped back and a bit more mellow. But still a great album. And they got a fellow, and they got a new band member in to replace Steve. His name is Vivian Campbell. Can't see his face, he's got sunglasses on, but he replaced Steve, and he's been in the band ever since. So he joined 1994, 1995, and yeah, he's been in the band ever since. Now, there's a couple of albums that they released in between. Now, I don't actually have them at the moment, but I will get them eventually. The next album they released was in 1999 called Euphoria. There's a better picture of the band. And this was an instant classic as well. It went multi-platinum again. And if I remember rightly, Def Leppard have sold over 100 million albums worldwide to this date, something along those lines. So they've done remarkably well for themselves. And the most recent album, I actually got this not too long ago, that's their most recent album, just named Def Leppard. And I'm not quite sure of the hit singles on this album. I don't know, to be honest, but it's a great album, and I will get these other albums that I don't have. Now, Def Leppard have been very close friends, extremely close friends with Bon Jovi. So there's Bon Jovi, and Def Leppard have toured with Bon Jovi, and Joe Elliott, the lead singer of Def Leppard, there he is there. That's Joe Elliott, lead singer of Def Leppard. He's very good friends with John Bon Jovi. So Def Leppard have toured with Bon Jovi. They've toured with Europe. I know if you guys remember Europe, I'll do a video on these guys sometime. But they've toured with Europe. They toured with a band called Tesla. They're very good friends with these guys from Tesla as well. They've toured with Poison. And they've also toured with Motley Crue as well. And as I said to you, and they've also toured with a band called LA Guns. Yeah. And just to give you a little bit of background information, that the guitarist there, Phil Collen, he joined the band in 1985. Now, he was originally in a band with the lead singer of LA Guns, Phil Lewis, and they were in a band called Girl. Both of them are English. So it just shows that these bands sort of do cross, that they do have ties with each other. So, yeah, Phil Lewis from LA Guns, that's one of their albums. He was in the same band as Phil Collen. Then, of course, Phil Collen joined Def Leppard in 1983. And Phil Lewis started up the band LA Guns, which I'll do a video on these guys as well. Yeah, so despite the tragedy of what's happened to Def Leppard, they're remarkable. They've always come through, and they're a very close knit family band, and they've just had massive success. And as I mentioned to you last video, Def Leppard doing a massive tour concert with Motley Crue and Poison. Now, whether that goes ahead in July, we don't know due to the coronavirus, but hopefully it will. So there you go. There's Def Leppard, a great 80s band, and a band that has defied the odds and come out despite tragedy and come out strong. So there's another great 80s band, and don't worry, I've got many more to come. So that's me to sign off, and hope everyone stays safe. Look after yourselves. Look out for one another. And as always, rock on. Bye-bye.